Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't seen or heard in the last few episodes, Play Noir is returning. An evening of film noir styled one-act plays written from playwrights from around the world. We're going to be accepting submissions through most likely June. If you need more information or guidelines, visit www.punkmonkeyproductions.com. If you happen to have a film noir styled one-act play in your toolkit, feel free to send it on over at info@punkmonkeyproductions.com. And in the meantime, if you're unfamiliar with the genre, pick up a copy of Play Noir Anthology, 41 film noir styled written one-act plays, written by playwrights from around the world. You can get that on Amazon, as well as barnesandnoble.com and walmart.com. My guest today is a playwright, solo performer, and stage director. He is the author of more than a dozen plays, including Casera Giant Monster, I Brought Home a Chupacabra, Dinosaur and Robot Stop a Train, Raspberry Fizz, Langdon, the Seasonal Barista, I Have Angered a Great God, and The Yeti in the Airport Lounge, among others. He's a satellite member of the Playwright Center and studied playwriting with willpower as part of the Dallas Playwrights Workshop at Southern Methodist University. He has toured his original one-person shows, Cyrano a Go-Go, Chop, Robert's Eternal Goldfish, and The Beast of Hyperborea, performing in venues and festivals all over North America. Since 2008, he has served as artistic director of the small batch theater company Audacity Theater Lab. And in 2015, he served as the first theater artist in residence at the Kathy George Indie Artist Residency in Ashford, Oregon. He holds a BFA from the College of Santa Fe and an MA from Texas Women's University. He has a YouTube channel where he talks about theater, including playwriting and solo performances. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brad McEntire. As I stumbled through that, my goodness.
You did great.
I'm going to blame the heat. There's some interesting things that I'm so unfamiliar with. So what does being a satellite member at the Playwright Center look like?
That means, and it's weird because I heard you say that out loud, and I'm like, I don't know if I've renewed that. I think it expired last month.
Oh, that's okay. But what was that experience? Even if you didn't renew it.
So the satellite member, I believe, is just somebody who doesn't live in Minneapolis near the Playwright Center, but is still a member of the Playwright Center. So you're still listed. I don't think I'm listed right now. I better check.
Sure.
Maybe before this comes out, I'll be able to update myself because I think it expired last month.
So what did you do as a satellite member?
Well, you just get access to the Playwright Center resources. Like they do workshops and webinars, and since COVID, they've started doing recordings of plays, like live streams of plays. And then they have a submission listings and stuff.
Okay, so were you doing any of their workshops?
I have done a couple of their workshops.
Okay.
Yeah, they've got some pretty good people. You can also apply as a member for the Jerome Fellowship, and I'm blanking on the other one, but the McKnight Foundation Fellowship. So ever so often I take a crack at those.
Okay. And what do those look like, or what do those entail?
Well, I can't remember which is which off the top of my head, but I believe it's the Jerome where you move and you live in Minneapolis for a year, and you're given a great amount of money, and you're given access to the Playwright Center, they have a theater there, Minneapolis a couple of times, and like walked in and introduced myself to the staff, and they've given me like the nickel tour and things. But that program offers development opportunities.
Sure.
Like for a long period of time, for a year at a time, I believe.
Wow.
I think maybe 2 years. It has a lot of ramifications to it to kind of get you off the ground. But sure. I find it useful for like the submission things. The Playwright Center is useful for like the listings of submissions when I take advantage.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, and I've been very behind. I've been doing this spiel about Play No War coming back, and I haven't sent out my call for submissions to Playwright Center or Playwrights Horizons and stuff like that. I need to get on that myself. So forgive me, everybody, for that. Yeah, no, I and that's why I was asking about whether or not you did the workshops or performed any of the workshops, because I did, after interviewing Stephen Dietz, he did like, I think a 2 or 3 day intensive. So I done that, and I just was wondering if you had done one of those as well, and just wanted to unpack and see what your experience was doing those things as well. So forgive me, because I'm going to sound ignorant on this, and maybe some of my audience may as well. Willpower.
Yeah.
Who is Willpower? And talk about that at Southern Methodist University.
Yeah. So Willpower is a playwright and kind of a hip hop artist. And he was in residency at the Dallas Theater Center for a couple of years, which is like my local regional theater. And he was doing a workshop with the Dallas Theater Center. And then when his residency ended, he stuck around Dallas for a little bit longer. And SMU picked him up to kind of house him to do this kind of workshop. And so he's run stuff, off Broadway and around the country, and Guthrie and Mark Taper Forum, I believe, and like a bunch of places. Anyway, he's up there in playwriting, and so I took his workshop. It was like I think 4 or 5 weeks, like once a week, kind of ongoing thing, and it was pretty good. Like, he's a pretty knowledgeable guy. Had a bunch of great little exercises and stuff.
How long ago was this?
This was maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay. So it wasn't terribly far into the past. So what can you? So you mentioned exercises. Can you tell me what some of those exercises were, and then any, like, one of the most beneficial things that you like? Oh my God, I never, something that you really took away outside of, besides those exercises. Yeah.
So I'll mention two. One of them was like because he's a hip hop artist, he is really into rhythm and following the beat of things. And so we wrote a scene between two characters following beats, like following different kind of time signatures, which makes the characters sound different. Which is handy, like, for writing a play. So right. I realize I have my readers on, and I'm going to put them back on if I can't see what's going on.
Sure, fair enough. I had to take mine off because my mind fog up because of heat. So no worries.
Okay. I like, as I get older, James, my eyesight is just disappearing.
Yes.
And I can't read. I can't see the computer screen. It is the worst thing. So everything's clear now, and if I take them off, It's all blurry. I'm going to keep them on. So one of them was writing in different rhythms. The other one was having two characters in a scene, and it seems like remedial to say it out loud, but it's one of those exercises I don't think playwrights do often, like on their own, until they're actually writing a play and it comes up. But he had two characters diametrically opposed, like opposite characters. Like in a play, sometimes like the antagonist and the protagonist, they're at cross purposes, and then sometimes they want the same thing, and it's like kind of a race to get it. He had us write scenes where the two characters were diametrically opposed and had to accomplish a goal, which was handy. Like, if you extend that to like real life, that would be a handy skill to like pick apart. Anyway, those were two of the ones that stuck out to me that I remember. It was just me and I believe 3 other people in the workshop at the time, so we had plenty of time to write stuff and then read it out loud and talk about each other's work. So when you were doing the rhythms, are we talking about like in the hip hop world, if you will, or are we talking like iambic pentameter and stuff like that and different rhythms in that regard? It wasn't that specific. It wasn't rhyming, and 5-syllable line, or what is
Sure.
it, 10-syllable lines and the beats on the second syllable. No, it was just keeping in mind, like, does this character speak in a staccato? Is this person lyrical and flowy in their speech? Is this character kind of stop and start again? Like, to pay attention to those.
Sure. What makes a character? What's an example of a character being lyrical?
So, just off the top of my head, if a character was lyrical, they would have a very kind of run-on way of speaking that never really ended and kind of rolled into the next thing, and perhaps they stretched their words out when they spoke. And you see what I'm saying? That's a
Sure.
person sounds differently than somebody who's like, "Hey, what you doing? Where you going? What's up?"
Right. Sure. Okay. Fair enough. Right.
Yeah. So it's just they seem kind of like basic to me, but it's shocking how often playwrights, myself in particular, I don't pay attention to that stuff as helpful exercises until somebody makes me. I think the really beneficial thing about most workshops is that they make you pay attention to kind of basic things.
Okay.
That you wouldn't normally, like. You're like, oh, I didn't even know I needed to work on this or pay attention to this. Now there's like, another tool in my toolkit for later on.
Sure. On that note, not to put you on the spot, because I do that on almost every episode, because you're not.
No, I've watched your show, James, and I know you do.
You know I do this.
I know you do this.
What is the one thing, if you could pinpoint one thing, what is the one thing that you think playwrights don't do?
Like, just in general?
In general. Or adhere to. They besides obviously sitting down to write. I mean, if there's one thing, it's like in your, that you find, like, working through Audacity or working in that workshop, it was like, that's kind of obvious. Why don't you do that? What's that one practice that you think that every playwright should be doing?
Well, I'll address it from the point of view of, like, because you do this as well, don't you? You tutor young playwrights?
I do a playwriting workshop once a year, and then I guest direct and sometimes mentor the playwrights over at Harvard Westlake. So yes.
Okay. So this might be familiar to you, but and to other playwrights as well. But I find that a lot of, especially newer playwrights or emerging playwrights, student playwrights, however you want to say it, often don't write for the stage.
Yeah.
They and I can't blame them. We live in an era where everything's online and from screens. I would say TV, but whatever the equivalent of TV is nowadays, streaming,
sure. Yeah.
Motion pictures, things like that. And I teach at a community college, and I do playwriting workshops, and I read the short plays that the people write, and they're constantly writing as they imagine it in their head, which is wonderful, except they often aren't writing for the parameters of the stage.
Right.
And the stage is, really different than writing for film or TV or any kind of screen related thing. So, I find that that's probably the main thing is I think emerging playwrights I think the ones that stick with it eventually catch on, or the ones that are like super theater nerds,
right,
who are maybe more hardwired to see it.
Yeah. How do you redirect that with them? Especially if it's a semester course, like, okay, you wrote me a scene from a movie with 15 locations,
Yeah.
So how do you? That's an example, but how do you redirect it when you get those samples and some submissions?
Well, I usually, if I get a chance to work with the playwright directly, so if it's a little contest of some kind, there's maybe a chance at written notes. But
right.
If it's really good to sit down one-on-one with a writer and say, hey, sure. What are you doing? Like, all right, so think through this. Oftentimes it starts with a conversation. I'm like, think through this. All right. First of all, what are you taking for granted? And what's the assumptions that you're making that are just assumptions? When you see it in your head, what is your assumptions? For instance, why do so many young playwrights write doors into their plays? Like they have a door, like a physical door, like people having an argument on one side of the door or another. And then I wanted them to picture like the resources available for the given production opportunity and say, okay, somebody's got to make a door frame. The actor on the other side of the door cannot be seen by the audience. There's no camera. We're not going to cut to the other side of the door. That one person's going to be heard more clearly than the other person. How long is this scene that happens at this door? Do you have to have a door? Can the person just be off stage? How often does the character have to exit off stage and then the stage is blank? Like the audience can see the whole stage the whole time, where sometimes I have to point out, I'm like, listen, when you see something on screen, the filmmaker manipulates you because they're a filmmaker. They have that option. You only see in a film of any kind, like a motion picture, video, whatever, what the person wants you to see when they want you to see it. Like we're beholden to the eye of the camera. So we get close-ups and we get lingering, long shots. We get quick cuts. We, the audience, are only able to see what the filmmaker wants us to see when they want us to see it. But on stage, you sit in the audience and you can see the whole stage the whole time.
Right.
And the trick of a good director is like, look over here while the thing's happening over here, like a magic trick.
Yeah.
But unless they go through the process of having that happen a couple of times, they don't quite understand the parameters of the stage all the time. I find in my own experience.
First of all, is it really that common that happens a lot in your experience of
common
teaching?
Enough for me to notice it?
So do you adjust your teaching approach then in that regard and just start covering hey guys, we're going to write plays, but before we sit down and get pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, we're going to go over some parameters first to really understand what the medium that we're working on is. I mean, is it beneficial to just head it off of the pass and say, before we even get to that point?
I think it would be. I will be honest, I don't think I do that up front very often, but I probably should.
I might need to as well. Again, this is the first time.
I kind of take for granted that if they're in a playwriting situation, a workshop or a competition or something, I take my own assumption is that they understand the medium that they're writing for. But I find that that's not always the case. Like it is an assumption on my part as an instructor. So
yeah, my workshops, it's 90 minutes, and it's always it's how to make a good script great. So it's really kind of for post. I guess it's for both, and I just certain things. I give 2 examples. I bring a play that was submitted that's terrible, objectively terrible. And then I bring another play that is pretty damn good. So they can compare and contrast. I'm like, like if I say show, don't tell, when we do it, usually I'm responding to students who had presented a student written 1 act, and I'm like, hey, there was a lot of showing. You told us you didn't show us what this meant. And then they might come later on and do the workshop. And then when I compare and contrast these 2 different plays, they're like, oh, now I understand what you mean by show, don't tell.
I see.
One of those things, and it's in dialogue as well, which is going to kind of contradict what is talked about in my next episode that drops on Tuesday. Is the character states what she's doing. She says, let me put my sweater under your head, rather than she puts her sweater under his head.
Right.
And so now in this one, the brilliant thing that we talked about in this last episode that's coming out is that inserting stage directions into dialogue.
Okay.
Which not in the obvious, let me put my sweater under your head, but more so, don't walk away from me. So it's in the dialogue, so that there's that stage direction that other character has to walk away.
Yeah, the actor has to start walking away.
Exactly. So that's a little bit different. But even in the other play that I do, it's a guy who was in part of the Play Noir anthology, Rich Cassone. He wrote a play called Eggs. And when you said, I don't understand what doors, and there's a door in his play, but it's just to serve as an entrance for the other character who comes on later on. But Rich's most brilliant, for me, his most brilliant piece of stage direction is a one-word action. Keys. That's it. Keys. You know what it means. It doesn't like somebody, Eugene inserts the key and unlocks the door. No. Keys. It's straightforward. How much can you say? How much can you say with as few words as possible? And that to me was one of the most I always use. So those are the two things that I use as far as that when it comes to a workshop. So
yeah, I find that sometimes I'll read plays where they put a window in, and I'm like, man, if you want to piss off a lighting designer, there's a window in your play, and it has to have a window frame in it for some reason or something. Like,
does it at least serve a purpose?
Say what?
Does it at least serve a purpose?
Yeah, like they'll ever so often. I remember one particular play I wrote where it's a person snuck in through a window and then closed the window behind them. And I remember asking the young playwright, I'm like, so what are you seeing as this window? Like, did you have on stage? What is this? What are you envisioning? And he was like, yeah, it has. He has to come in and then close it and lock it behind him. Yeah, I expect a window. Like, did you open and close? And it has the window pane in it. And I'm like, you want glass in the window? Like, glass and stage don't go together that often. Like they just don't. Like, what are you trying to do here? Like,
right.
what's the actual purpose of this moment?
Sure.
That's usually what I say to the young actors when I get to spots that I'm like, wait, you want to flash forward to like a different location and a different location and a different location a minute apart? Like, what are you trying to do? It's the same with a lot of those, this is a tangent, but you remember those plays that came out in the early 2000s? They had a lot of impossible stage directions in them.
Oh, no.
No?
No, I'm fascinated.
Okay. There was a string of plays that came out. I was a literary manager at a theater in Dallas, and I remember reading a lot of these plays that had stage directions where the playwright would write, the person reaches into their chest and pulls out their heart, and their heart bursts into 1,000 butterflies as a stage direction. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, what do you want to happen here?
Wow.
It sure aids in the reading of it, but then if you have to imagine it practically, it kind of is hard to do on stage in any kind of practical way at all. So I directed a play years ago where a guy said, I need you to, the playwright was like, I need them to throw this liquor bottle into a trash can, and it bounces up out of the trash can, and the guy grabs it, and then he throws it into the trash can, and it breaks. And we had a very long conversation where I was like, well, what do you want to say with this moment? Like in a more general way, what do you want the audience to come away with here? What are you trying to say about the character by having this action happen? And can we find an alternative to this? Because as the director of this play, I have to figure out a way for this bottle to bounce back up out of a trash can. And then do I have the sound of something breaking? How does it go back in the trash can without bouncing back out? It was one of these stage directions that the playwright wrote in And then the director had the task of trying to figure out how to do it. And I just remember having a really long conversation where I was like, what are you trying to do? Like, what's the purpose of this moment? And you tell me in your own words, and then we'll work out how to do it practically on stage, because this stage direction's sort of impossible.
It just sounds like
impossible, but it's like way beyond the natural resources that most theater companies have.
Right.
That you have to dedicate an improportionate amount of time to.
It sounds like a gimmick or a device or not even a device, because at least a device serves a purpose. But, I mean, it's interesting. There was one of the plays we did. Travis Blue had written a play called Dance with Danger, and another character comes in with a gun, and then she shoots the main character, but it goes through him and then hits the other woman's drink. And he's like, you shot me. And she's like, you shot me drink. And I'm like, and it was the most brilliant piece of theater that my most proudest moment is, because we went ahead and, because we're in LA and so we have access to these things on hand. We bought breakable glass. So when the gun goes off, she squeezes her glass, it shatters. He reacts, he grabs the side, she shatters her drink, it sprays all over. It's a brilliant moment. It's one of my, so at least there's certain things that are achievable, but it also served a purpose. Yeah. And I'm not quite sure a bouncing bottle of liquor does.
Yeah. Well, I found out we figured out how to do it without it bouncing back up, basically.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
We had the guy about to throw it away, and he had a hard time letting go of it. And then and I was like, but I had to have the separate conversation with the playwright to say, what do you want to do right here on stage? What is the character doing? All right, well, here's the money I have available and the resources I have available and the time I have available as your director. Why don't you step up and help me accomplish this moment for the best interest of your play and the production? So
since it wasn't part of your bio and you just kind of let that little tidbit out, how long were you a literary manager, and what other things what advice can you give, whether that's what to do and what not to do, and other things that you experience? Just like, again, when I read some of the plays that I get submitted, I'm like, really? Especially knowing what you're submitting for. I don't know if I think I've told this story in the past, but again, it's noir. I did 7 seasons of it, and I got to play. It was a 1 hour long commentary, back and forth commentary of an English football game. Back and forth about what they're watching that's not on stage. They're watching a football game.
Okay.
And their commentators, a play-by-play commentary about what the audience can't see. And then every once in a while, a referee and a cop will walk on and do this Benny Hill type thing and then run off. Not noir at all. Not really theatrical. Maybe you could call it farce. I don't think it was. Huh. So my thing is like things like that, where it's like, know what you're submitting to. I don't know. You tell me. I know my experiences. I'm just curious if there's other things that you've experienced that I'm like, wow, okay. Like, don't do that, guys. Listen, the people. That's why we have this podcast.
Yeah, the takeaway, the main thing that stuck out to me is like, you're like, it's not even noir. It's not even noir. I worked at an experimental theater company in Dallas. It's called the Undermain Theater. It's still going strong. It's been around for 20 some odd years. And I was there part-time, like 10 hours a week, like not much. And all I did was read plays and make little reports on them and email back to the playwrights, like, listen. And most of them were like, I'm sorry, we're just not looking for this sort of work. No commentary on the work, just you sent it to the wrong theater company, basically.
Right.
Like, I don't think you researched this theater company when you sent this in. So better luck. Like, and I had a form letter, the same kind of form letters I receive all the time, where it's like, thank you for your submission, but this will not fit what we're looking for at this time. And once in a blue moon, a playwright would contact me and like, well, what are you looking for? And I'm like, well, go look at the plays that we've done at this theater in the past. Like, this was like a theater company that did like David Rabe and Mac Wellman and Eric Inn and those kind of plays. And then I would get, musicals about Arbor Day or something. And I was like, no commentary on your play's quality. Just, you sent it to the wrong place.
Right.
And I would resist the urge to put my anger in of having to read this play, because I read so many plays, and I did read a bunch of bad plays, and I did read where I would stop after the first 10 or 15 pages where I'm like, if this gets better, I'm not even going to find out. And then I would read plays. Ever so often there'd be a play, I'm like, whoa, what is this? Oh my gosh, a diamond in the rough. Pass it up the food chain. And then I would send a report and my thoughts on it. And then I would, in the play itself, I would send up to the artistic directors and see if they wanted to take a chance on it and stuff. So
what if it was a great play, but it just didn't fit what you guys were doing?
I did read a couple of those, and ever so often I would find a play that I was like, oh, this is great. This is totally not what we do at all. Right. And then I would send them back. I was like, if you're looking to get this done in Dallas, here's a couple of other theater companies to consider. Here's the literary manager or the person that reads the plays at this theater company. That's another thing, is I would get a lot of plays sent to the building. Like, they didn't contact and say, who's in charge over there? Not necessarily who's the literary manager, which I think at bigger theaters, that's a good idea to find out. But they didn't even seem to know the name of anybody who worked there. They just sent it to the building because it was somewhere to. And I was reading plays back when people actually sent paper plays. Like, this was before the days of online submission. So
right.
Yeah. Nowadays in online submission, it's easy to go, delete. Like, I read the first couple of pages, or folder, most of the time, like folder, just not going to use folder.
Yeah.
Quick response.
Yeah. I don't know. I get flack because I do read everything all the way through, no matter how bad it is.
Oh,
and I don't know.
You have a lot more time than I have. Oh my gosh.
I don't know if it's a lot of time. It's just like, sometimes it's like, if it wasn't noir, I'm like, maybe there's a twist at the end. Let me get through the end, and maybe there's a twist that will make it noir. Or maybe it just, it'll be a learning experience for me. I don't know.
You read it chronologically all the way through, or do you skip to the end to find out?
No, I did read that. Even that play, that play-by-play commentary play, I read all the way through, and it was long. It was like 60 pages, even though we had a cap out at like 30. Interesting. So what's your approach just over the whole process? Like, you sit down, let's talk about your one-person shows first. That seems to be popping up quite a bit lately, with guests that we've had on. What's your experience with? Are you doing multiple characters as a one-person actor, or are you interacting with the audience? Is it one of those? Is it and I'm going to say it's not, because based on the title Cyrano a Go-Go, you're not telling a tragic story that you overcame, as my experience with most one-person shows are. Yeah,
I'm the guy in your early episodes that would commentate on the YouTube videos where I'm like, hey, did you see some bad one-person shows?
Was that you? Because I know that I know you've commented.
Yeah, I have a couple of different
recently.
YouTube accounts.
But there was somebody's like, James, you don't go to enough one-person shows. Was that you?
That was probably me.
Okay.
Me.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
And I think I gave you kudos. I'm like, okay, fair enough. That's probably true, because that's, and we have a theater that does that. There's a theater here in Sherman Oaks, and they do they teach you how to do a lot of one-person shows, but that's their approach. It's not
okay.
So teach me, oh wise one.
Well, I don't blame you. The stereotype of one-person plays, and it does not exist in a vacuum. There are a lot of one-person plays that are kind of confessional, and they're based on real life, like obstacles that a person's had to overcome about their own identity or a disease or a big life event. Right. And a lot of a lot of solo performance workshops really aim towards this. Like, they kind of lean into it. And there's a reason for that, is because if you want to fill your workshop with people, the sub-arcana of solo performance is really a very small alternative in the greater world of theater. So you got to pull in non-theater people. You got to pull in people that are like, well, yeah, I got a story to tell. Yeah. I overcame a horrible divorce and had to overcome so many obstacles in my life. Or I am a cancer survivor and I want to tell my story. Or now those stories are all valid.
Sure.
But solo performance has gotten sort of a bad rap because of the preponderance of these workshops that have popped up that kind of treat it sort of as therapy as well as a theatrical format. And it's a format. It's not a genre of theater. It's a format of theater.
I don't think that there's anything wrong with it being therapeutic, by the way. There's no judgment there, just for what it's worth.
No, and in a greater in a greater sense, I think most theater is therapeutic to some level. Like, I don't think that's the aim of necessarily, but I think good theater helps mental health
100%
in general.
I think a lot of episodes that I've had, there's a lot of catharsis comes up a lot. So
yeah. And I personally have I don't write confessional play. I call them confessional, like autobiographical plays. And even within that, there's a lot of a huge long range.
Sure.
It's just that a lot of the workshops where people learn how to write solo performances and then take them around to fringe festivals and put them on stage at local theaters, those sort of lean into like, well, what's your story? Just play a fictionalized version of yourself on stage telling your real story, and we'll pick the highlights out of it. But there's other kinds of, there's as many kinds of solo performance as there is any other kind of theater.
Sure.
So I lean towards fictional plays on stage that just happen to be told in a solo format. And in order for them to be told in a solo format, the form and function have to match up. So there's usually a framing device. And I can't remember if you had Megan Gogarty on recently, who I love. She's fantastic. She's wonderful. But I think she touched on this, is that the audience usually plays the other person in the scene or in the play.
Yeah.
There's a framing device that allows the audience to be the other character that your main character is speaking to. And so I have a play called Chop, which is the first one that I took around everywhere to like fringe festivals and performed all over the place because I wanted to rehearse on my own and not go through the logistics of calling a group of actors together, which is how traditional theater is done. You have to like rent a rehearsal space and then get everybody's schedules to jive and deal with, people being there for costume fittings and all that kind of stuff, which I should make clear. I've got nothing against. I'm steeped in the traditional theater too, but I wanted to see like how far could I go if I just rehearsed in my room?
Sure.
Like my office, or my living room or something. I won't have to rent a space. I rehearse whenever I want. And at that production, I had a director that I would touch base with throughout the process. And now I've moved away from having a director after I've kind of got my sea legs under me to figure out there's a fine line between just standing there in the middle of the stage like a stand-up comic,
sure,
and then having a director fully outfit it. I think there's a sweet spot between those two things to have an actual stage production where you have blocking and movement and stage pictures, but it's also just done by one person. So in Chop, I play the protagonist who stumbles into an underground amputation fetish group. And we learn at the end of the play that the people watching are in this fetish group. Like the audience are the amputation fetishists. And the character I play on stage is the person willing to wield the axe. And it's the story of me introducing myself of here's where I'm coming from. And here's how I got to being the person that will wield the axe. I'll cut off your limb for you. And it, of course, is a dark comedy. And
right.
That framing reveal doesn't come till the end of the play.
Sure.
But therefore, the audience is not an audience watching a theater production. They're an audience in an underground amputation fetish group.
How do the, and I think I might have talked about this with Megan as well. What's the, how do you approach those structurally?
Well, structurally, it's structured like a play, like a traditional play, like Aristotelian, like a Freytag's triangle, the whole beginning, middle, and end, introduction, inciting incident, that kind of thing.
Sure, but when does that inciting incident happen? When do you, I hate using this because I don't think there is a specific playwriting book as far as structure goes, as far as this is how you structure a play. Save the Cat is my go-to, because Save the Cat is a marketing tool to write a very marketable movie that you can pretty much do it with almost every blockbuster. Maybe blockbuster is not the right word, but every popular studio film. By page 5, this happens. By page 30 something, this has to happen. This is where your first act ends. Then you've got to have the all bets are off, everything's lost, and then you have the big here's the turnaround and everything. By page 90, 89 or 90, this happens, and now that's your conclusion, and everybody lives happily ever after. That's when the studio structure. But there isn't anything like that in playwriting. It's like when you take a play, if you take The Wild Duck by Ibsen, you've got, two servants talking about thinking, they're sprinkling a little bit of information of what's kind of going on. You're starting in the middle, but then we're waiting for the reveal. What are they talking about? Exactly. And then it's okay. And then, but again, there's no structures as far as this has to happen by this page. This has to happen by this page.
Yeah. Commercial motion pictures. They're very formulaic. Which doesn't mean they're bad to watch.
No,
just I haven't read Save the Cat. I'm familiar with it, but I haven't actually picked it up and read through it. But if you look at a normal blockbuster movie, a normal commercial movie, even a streaming service or something, it's approximately half an hour in that the inciting incident happens.
Right.
Plot kicks into gear.
Right.
Anywhere from 25 minutes to 30 some odd minutes in, 90% of the time. And I'm not saying plays have the straight up equivalent, but I do believe plays worth their salt have some sort of structure, and that structure involves a beginning, middle, and end, even if 100%. It's not in that order.
100%.
And I'm very Aristotelian in my thinking about play structure.
Sure.
But for solo performance, one of the dangers is just to have a stream of conscious thoughts thrown up in the air. But you do have to have a structure. The structure doesn't necessarily have to be that introduction, rising action, climax, that the usual kind of Freytag's triangle kind of thing. It can be structured as a letter. It can be structured as a Russian nesting doll. It can be structured as a recipe. It can be structured as a mixed tape that you might have sent somebody on a cassette back in the day. Like these all offer structures to tell the story, and the story should have a beginning, middle, and end of someplace it starts, goes to, and then how it's going to end up, at least at the end of it, how it's left in the air at the end. Even though I will admit, who was the filmmaker, the French guy, Godard, who's like, yes, a story should have a beginning, middle, and end, but it doesn't necessarily have to go in that order. I think it's Godard. I might not be right.
No, it's just that the play that I mentioned earlier that's terrible.
The commentary one?
No, the other one, the one that was like, let me put my sweater under your head. Thank God, I'm so sorry if that playwright is listening. I'm sorry. I apologize. And I'm happy to talk with you about it. The main character, it did. Again, I use it as an example. The main character, his last name is Godard. He's a filmmaker.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, do you know the person, the person that the literal person that you're talking about? Do you know his first name?
Jean-Luc Godard, the French New Wave.
Okay, it's not. Yeah. Okay, so at least I'll give the playwright that they thought through and used if they have a character, the filmmaker, they used a famous filmmaker's last name. But sorry. Anyways, so when you're talking about those different structures, which is I love, is that what are you talking about? Are you talking about playwriting in general, or are you talking about just your solo work? But that mixtape.
I do believe you can apply that to all kinds of things. Like,
sure.
I used to do long form improv, like solo long form improv.
Oh wow, you're a brave man. I've seen it attempted, and I'm like,
younger man's game, but for me.
Yeah, well, still, I've seen that attempted when I was doing long form. I'm like, no, you do not have the chops right now to start attempting that.
Yeah,
so
lots of energy reserves needed for that kind of thing, and your brain's got to be way working for you.
Sure.
But I found that when I turned 38, I did a long form set, which I put for 380 minutes.
Wow.
And the format that I had at the time was called Dribble Funk. And I did this solo improv for 6 hours and 20 minutes. That's what 380 minutes works out for. And I found quickly that I would finish a scene on stage and I didn't know where to go. And I kind of stumbled on this concept of like having the story unfold like a Russian nesting doll. So the character has to accomplish a major goal that's stated pretty close to the beginning of the set. Listening to myself as one of the characters in the improv set, I was like, oh, somebody stated what they want out of something. So that character is going to have to try to get that. And then every time the character got a little bit closer, they got pushed back where they had to accomplish some other goal to get to the next step. So it was like a Russian nesting doll of like trying to get to the center of it. So instead of having them go on a typical like hero's journey or something, they got like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But the 1 step back involved a bunch of other steps that they had to be sent on to accomplish the ultimate goal that I was trying to somehow get her back around to on this wayward kind of tangential improv set. And at the time, of course, because it's improv, I had no idea what was going on or where I was going. But I knew enough to listen to myself at the beginning, like you you've done improv, you know the drill.
Yeah.
You have to listen. You have to listen to the
100%,
other
yeah.
people on stage, or it doesn't work. So for solo improv, you literally have to listen to yourself and figure out as the characters where you're going. And so I was steeped enough in improv to know that I was like, oh, the character has stated that's the motivation. Now, how do I get to that? But like 6 hours from now, or, I guess if you get to it, what else do you want? What else do you want? So that it just happened to be that way. And I was like, oh, this nesting doll kind of format of accomplishing many goals inside of the goals to get to the main goal, and every goal pushing you back further instead of pushing you closer to it, is a perfectly valid structure for writing a play. Like for actually writing, scripting out a play, or for that matter, a solo performance. I think solo performing kind of falls into 3 categories. There's that autobiographical sort of show where people play a version of themselves on stage.
Right.
So if I were on stage, I would be Brad. So the show I have called Cyrano Go-Go is about me talking about the play Cyrano de Bergerac, which was the first play that I picked up when I was a teenager. I took my first theater class and they made us write a play report. And they said, go to the library, find a play. And I picked up 3 or 4 plays off the shelf, and they of course were way over my head. Like I think I picked up an Ibsen play and a Beckett play and things. And I was like, I have no context for any of this yet.
Right. Sure.
And then I picked up Cyrano de Bergerac as like a 15-year-old, and I was like, what is this? And it sort of formed how I thought about theater. Like I was like, oh, this is what theater is? Sword fights and declarations of love and poetry and adventure and fight scenes and all that, sign me up. And I got hooked on theater partly because of that play. And so the solo performance is me performing snippets of the play, but also tying it in with both the history of the making of that play, which was impossible. Like it's a play that should not have succeeded in any regard the way it did for the context in which it was made. And my own journey of like overcoming requited love and figuring out my purpose as like a theater performer and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So I play me in the play. Like I play a version of Brad that's telling about the play Cyrano de Bergerac and how it connects with me. But then there are also plays where the performer is nowhere to be seen. It is completely them playing other characters. Sometimes they play one character the whole time that's fictional, or sometimes they play a parade, like a tour de force of other characters. It's just like a John Leguizamo sort of one thing after another. Like here's a character sketch, like I don't know, Whoopi Goldberg or somebody that plays like all these different characters paraded out on the stage, kind of thematically linked. And then the third kind would be like a novelty show, like circus or dance or a clown show or something like that. Right. Those are still solo shows.
Sure.
But I find in a big generalization, they kind of fall into these 3 categories. Yeah.
How, and then, so let's say you well, how does that process work? Then you write your draft, and then do you just go back through it and make sure that everything that's there you want to see, and then do you go just perform it and figure out? Because obviously, it's not like you're going to do a table read with a bunch of other actors. So how do you know when you're? How do you know when you're done?
I do table reads though.
Okay.
No. My wife's very patient with me. I totally read her stuff out loud, and I was like, does that make sense? What images pop up in your head? Like playwriting questions. And she's very patient, and she's also, her perceptions are very weird to me. So she'll latch onto something that I wasn't even paying attention to.
Okay.
And it will make me think about it and indirectly and come back around to something, which I think the best talkbacks do.
Okay.
For in general for playwrights. And then I do record myself so I can see myself. Now that after that first play, I don't work with a director because I'm a director. And
Sure.
the aim for me was to eventually come up as a full one-person operation, using directing and producing and playwriting and acting like as just an amorphous thing, like without kind of differentiation. So I'll record myself to see what I look like if I were sitting in the audience. And this helps me block myself out a little bit. So, yeah.
And then how do you approach like lighting design in that regard? Do you know, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go for a blue light here because I kind of feel this emotion's happening. And then I might go to a red light when it, maybe that inciting incident happened, or do you just, how do you approach that?
Well, it's mostly case by case. Like, of course,
Sure.
But yeah, I picture it as a full stage moment. So, for example, in that play Chop, there's a dream sequence where the main character is dreaming about a little boy riding up on a bicycle, and approaches him from a distance in the darkness. Like he's run out of a situation at night, and he's run and run and run until he can't run anymore. And then this kid rides up on a bicycle, and the first thing he sees when the kid rides up is the reflectors turning in the spokes.
Right. Sure.
And so to accomplish that, I've had the lighting designers turn out the lights, and I'm standing in the darkness, and I have a flashlight under my face, like shining up campfire style.
Sure. Right.
And as I described it, the kid's riding up, I have it the flashlight on a string, and I spin the string. So it creates the image of the spokes of the reflector on the tire shining out of the darkness. So as the moments are needed, then I will, if need be, I will, try to create the lighting design that I need. Admittedly, because I travel a lot with these shows to fringe festivals and different venues, like I'm just getting into like performing shows at retirement homes.
So let's, before not to interrupt, but because that's what I do want to talk about. So I wanted so you're doing these touring shows. How do you find your venues? Obviously, fringe shows anybody can do. So what other approaches do you take?
So I also do local theater, like around town here around Dallas. There's lots and lots of venues. They ebb and flow, as in most places, I imagine, where theaters go under and new theaters rise up.
Sure.
And so I'll often approach them and say, hey, can I do a late night spot? Or there's a large theater company here in Dallas called Shakespeare Dallas that, does Shakespeare in the Park. And a couple of years ago, they did Cyrano de Bergerac. And so I approached the artistic director and I said, hey, I have a play that's basically the DVD special features of this this production when it originally was mounted. Do you have a space that I can do this in, and we'll cross promote it? Come see the one-man show by Brad, and then also go see Cyrano, in the park. And they went for that, and we ended up kind of cross promoting it. And I just did it in the rehearsal space that they usually rehearse the shows in, and presented it there, and had, ticket holders that wanted to see the main show come and see me as well. Like I was like, you get in to see my show is super steep discount in relation to Shakespeare in the Park. Like bring your ticket stub in, and so nice. Yeah, it worked out kind of promoting. I find that the solo performing is not just on the stage, it's also off stage. It kind of demands a lot more entrepreneurial approach.
Sure.
And I find that I have a theater company that I do full out works with ever so often, and I put my solo performance kind of under the umbrella of that company as well. But I find individually, I move a lot more nimbly and a lot faster, and can get into different so I've done shows in coffee shops and in hotel lobbies and in the back of bars and stuff.
So tell me about you're just calling retirement home saying, "Hey, I got the show."
No, I have a friend who works in elder care, and I had drinks with her not too long ago, and she's like, "Hey, would you want to do a show for some elderly people in these like elder care kind of places?" And I was like, "Well, what kind of things do you usually have there?" And she's like, "Oh, we have musicians come in and play the guitar, and amateur magicians and things like that." And she's like, "But we're always looking for stuff, and your solo shows are pretty easy to travel with. They take an hour. You want to do one?" And I'm like, yeah, I will. Like, that's the overhead gets lower if you keep doing the show for months and years. You get it down pat, and you also get better at it. I feel like, speaking from the eye of the storm, I can't completely, I'm subjective about it, but you definitely learn more about your own play if you just keep doing it, doing it for different audiences in different places.
Do you make changes?
I do. I totally do official changes where I actually update the script after I perform it for like a string of solo engagements.
Sure. Right.
And early on, I had to fight the urge because as a playwright and improviser, I had a bad habit of rewriting it on the stage in the moment. And that often caused problems. Yeah.
You can imagine.
So I've learned to just memorize my own plays the same way I would memorize anyone else's plays.
Sure.
Verbatim. And then when I want to do an overhaul, I redo the rehearsal process with the new script completely. Because otherwise I throw off tech cues and things in the moment that I think jokes are going to work. They don't. And I'm like, oh, this was a bad idea. Get back on script, Brad. Like, it's your own script. They don't know. You get on your own script. So
let's talk about your YouTube channel.
Oh yeah.
What is it called, and what do you cover?
Before we get off the reservation here on the thing, I was just going to say most of my solo shows are really low tech because I appear at fringe festivals, and I don't know how familiar you are with fringe festivals. I know they have the Hollywood Fringe there.
The Hollywood one, of course, everybody knows about Edinburgh, and I guess there's a New York Fringe as well. And Minneapolis has a Fringe too.
I don't know. I think the New York Fringe is going. I can't remember if the New York Fringe is still a thing or not.
It might not. I mean, I think it is. Somebody I had on recently talked about New York Fringe, but it might have been a past. It might have been a past play, so I can't say that it is or isn't. And I usually do include those in show notes.
Okay.
So I believe it is. Okay. Because I probably would have included that link in the show notes for that.
The New York Fringe Festival, the New York International Fringe Festival, it shut down a little bit, and I can't remember if it was like right before the pandemic or right during the pandemic. Right. And then I think they may have changed hands, like management, to get it back up and going, but it stopped for a little bit. That's why the only reason I call it out is because I'm like, wait, are they back up and running? Anyway, I do it really low tech because I never know where I'm going to be. Like the Fringe Festival is
still going. New York City Fringe 2025. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, they set up a card table and put a CD player on it, and they're like, "That's our tech." So most of my solo shows are really lights up, lights down, general wash, and then only the things that I can do myself on stage. Of like, for that spinning flashlight, all I need them to do is like turn the lights off.
Sure.
Yeah. Back on, like
right.
And then I'll do the lighting effect myself. Right. So I keep it pretty low tech, so I can just travel in a backpack. Like the whole production fits in a backpack.
Nice. Okay.
It can be set up in pretty much any. If I find myself in an art gallery, I can do the show. Or if I find myself in a nicely outfitted proscenium arch theater, I can do the show.
Nice. There we go.
Yeah.
Simplicity at its finest.
Yeah. So you were asking about the YouTube
Your podcast, yeah. Or I mean your YouTube channel, yeah.
Yeah, I have one of each. I have a podcast real quick called the Cultivated Playwright that I started a number of years ago, and it's just me talking for anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour about some aspect of like artistic life, traveling to fringe festivals, or observations I've made about playwriting, or just life. Like the cultivation part's part of it too. Like,
sure,
just trying to be a better person and navigate the world and get by as an artist. Sure. And
all right. Well, like I said, when including the show notes, we'll make sure we add your podcast to that.
Oh, good. And then I recently, there's a story behind it, but I started a new YouTube channel named after my website, Brad McEntire Plays. And in it, I am doing just theater videos, like videos about different aspects of theater, like what's the contribution of actor managers, or I've shot videos on some of the fringe festivals I've gone to, and so they're like little documentaries about what the experience of a solo performer at a fringe festival, so that kind of stuff.
Okay. Do you have is there a favorite fringe that you like that you've done that you like? Like for me, and this is more for film, but like we went to, in 2004, we went to Ashland International Independent Film Festival, I think it was what it was. And we were so welcomed and we had so much fun and it was such a blast that we wanted to make a film every freaking year just to try to go back.
Because was this Ashland, Oregon or
Ashland, Oregon? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that film festival was like, we stayed at somebody's house. They had a spare room or two. And that's what we did. They opened up their house to us. We stayed there. If they couldn't offer up an Airbnb for it, not an Airbnb, they didn't have Airbnb, a bed and breakfast for us. There were certain places that gave like a 25 or 50% discount if you dined there or drank there. It was awesome. They were great. And like we walked in, I was like, oh my gosh, it's the Second Degree. I'm like, hey, Bruce Campbell was there. He had Bubba Hotep going.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So is there a favorite fringe festival for you that you just like, if you could go back every time you would?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The what you were just talking about goes a long ways in my book. The spirit of hospitality.
Yeah.
That really does. I really dig artists supporting and inviting in other artists. Like, I think that's beneficial to the field in general. And just as people, it's always good to not mess with people that are jerks or too kind of into their own thing. They widen it so everybody can play. And I'll shout out one that's one of my favorites in Illinois. There's a fringe festival, a small one called Elgin, the Elgin Fringe Festival, and they're about 30 some odd miles outside of Chicago. And it's just this small town, and the organizers behind it have grown it into a bigger and bigger and more outfitted festival year by year. So they have come up with like a kids track, like so you can take your family to see shows. They have events around it, as well as the main shows that are going on are brought in from a kind of national and international group of people. So yeah, the Elgin Fringe Festival, and a lot of the reason is because they're very welcoming, and the audiences that are in Elgin and then come from the neighboring towns around Elgin every year for this big festival. And they've coincided it with like a street market kind of festival that happens as well. Like more things to bring tourists in.
Sure. 100%.
Beyond just the small town itself. And it's grown and grown into this really nice thing, because as a solo performer who nobody knows, like I'm not a household name. So when I show up at these fringe festivals and I do as much of the marketing I can on my own, And then, of course, the festivals market the festival. They don't market your individual play. I sometimes will perform for like, if I get an audience of like 12 to 15 people, I'm like, yeah, all right. Admittedly, if there were like 7 people on stage, the math is harder to work out, but it's just one person. It lends itself to intimate spaces and intimate performances. And, every so often I'll show up and have like, there's like 50 people. This is fantastic. Like, I love it. And then once in a blue moon, there's like several hundred people.
Right.
And then once in a blue moon, there's like 1. So, which I have performed for.
You got to.
We just sit down in front of them and have like more of a conversation about this show. And that person goes off and tells the tale. So this Elgin has pretty consistent audiences because they've grown it into a viable like festival operation year by year by year. They've built it up. So it's nice to show up. And also, if you go back to the same festival, there's a lot of fringe performers who, some of them are solo performers and some of them are, performing with groups of people, but they'll go to the same festivals year after year and the audiences expect them to come back, like, what is it that traveled to San Juan Capistrano? The birds that come back.
Oh yeah. Are they sparrows? Are they swallows?
The sparrows you know what I'm talking about. So the people return, in this kind of prodigal way back to these festivals. I had in Minneapolis is like that. The Minneapolis Fringe Festival has been going long enough and it's big enough now that I have a good friend who's a solo performer. His name is Martin Dockery, and they have a preview night where you do a little snippet, and it's like the opening of the festival, and you have like 5 minutes on stage to show a snippet of your show, and they run these back to back to back to back, and there's places to buy tickets out in the lobby. So if you see something you like, look, mark your program. And so it's really beneficial, this preview night. And most of the other performers, me included, we did actual snippets from the show, like a little preview of the show. But Martin Dockery has been going back to this festival now for 15 years, with the COVID break, but he keeps going year after year and getting accepted into this Fringe Festival. And so he just walked up and just chit-chatted with the audience. Like his preview.
Oh, interesting.
It's not a snippet of the show at all. It's just him saying, hey, it's me, Martin. I'm back in town. Here's what's been going on lately. And then at the end of the 5 minutes, he's like, oh, and I got the show. And you should come see it. This is the log line, and here's the dates it's playing in the venue. And I was great. Like, these guys must really know him in order for that to even work as a preview. Like he didn't do anything of the show. He just kind of said, I'm here in town. I got a show going on.
That's awesome.
So
what are you working on right now?
So right now I'm working on my YouTube thing that got off to a stumbling start. As I'm finding YouTube's harder to do than I thought it was.
Yeah, right.
There's a lot of moving parts to it. And so I'm trying to get that off the ground. I work as an adjunct college professor. And last fall, I didn't have a class, and the production I was supposed to direct fell through. Ooh. And I found myself basically living on savings and, performance gigs to make ends meet. And I was like, I'm going to try to diversify myself as an artist and get online more. And theater doesn't adapt itself to online like other fields. And so the learning curve has been steep as I've tried to figure out how to monetize some of what I do. Yeah. That's not a live experience. So the YouTube is part of it. And I redesigned my website so that I could give away like an email, like, here's a gift if you join my newsletter. And I'm considering a Patreon and stuff. So in a wider sense, I'm trying to figure out how to join the 2020s.
I'm right there with you.
as a bit of a digital artist in a field that doesn't have a high demand for digital.
Yeah.
Like it. Yeah. So you started this podcast, right, during the pandemic?
No, I didn't.
Right before, right after?
I think I started in 2021 because there was I happened to qualify for a small business loan.
Oh,
and I
okay.
declined the first one in 2020 because I'm like, I already have $15,000 of student debt I've been paying on for 20 years. I don't need to add another $6,000 to it. So I declined it. And my neighbor, who's a musician, is like, hey, they're forgiving those loans. You don't have to pay them back. I'm like, great. So I declined it. And then in 2021, they did it again. And I qualified for an initial and then a supplemental. And so I had this chunk of change, but there was no theater going on still. And I'm just like, what am I going to do with this? And I'm going to reinvest it in the company, in Punk Monkey Productions. And I just started doing a bunch of research as far as like, what's the best cameras for this? What are the great microphones for this? Yes, you can do it with a cell phone and earbuds. You can do a podcast, but I wanted to go all out, and what earphones, what monitors, and I overspent. Like, I don't need 2 monitors. I don't need the side monitor that's this main one's way too big. It's curved, which pisses me off. The Rodecaster was great. That was a great purchase. I did a Mac Mini, which I guess was okay. And then I have an A10, Blackmagic A10 Mini Pro that if I'm in-house, I can toggle back and forth between cameras.
Oh, okay.
I can toggle back and forth with us as well, but it's not the same because it requires the use of the mouse than me just pressing a button like back and forth. I can just my middle and index finger going back and forth between camera 1 and camera 2 at moments that I think that are, like if I'm going to ask a question, I'll put the camera back on me. And then I'll put the camera back on them. Or maybe I'll do a reaction to what they're saying or acknowledgement shot of like what they're saying. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. So, but yeah. And, and then some cameras, like, some cameras shut off if you're going to use a DSL. Because some cameras shut off after 15 minutes of video. And, so I had to go with Sony A6100s. So that's that. So
yeah, it's a bit of a rabbit hole to go down. Yeah. And it's learning by expensively doing. Yep.
Well, and now, there was one guy that I was following. I'm like, wow, this guy gives great advice. And he was talking about boom arms, right? And I had a when I was doing voiceover, when I started doing voiceover work, I brought a Monster, not Monster, a Yeti, a Blue Yeti was the microphone I started off with, and then when I started doing this, I, got the Shure microphones and whatever the other ones are, but I was looking at boom arms, and this guy that I was following is recommending, oh, hey, what about this Mac Mini? Is that any good? Or what about this or that? And I'm like, so he's going through these boom arms, and the Yeti was a boom arm. But the problem with the Yeti is, it's like, and I kind of have it with this one. I forgot what this one is, but this one sinks while I'm talking. The Yeti, I can't hold down, and it just starts rising up. And I'm like, this is a terrible boom arm. And I emailed him, or YouTube messaged him. He's like, yeah, they're not. I'm like, then why don't you say that? Give an honest assessment. Don't talk them up because you want their money or sponsorship. Tell me the truth.
I bought this boom arm and it doesn't do what boom arms are supposed to do.
Right, exactly. So anyway, so that's my shtick on that.
No, the learning curve is steep. So I'm slowly making my YouTube videos better, but because I've had to go back and reassess it as I go along, I've stopped putting them out. Like they were put out every week, and then there was like every 2 weeks, and now I'm like every month I put something out.
Sure.
And it's supplemental to what I actually do. So
100%.
The podcast as well is supplemental. So I'm not for that. It's not on a schedule. It's just when I feel like I have something to say and the time, a couple of minutes to say it, then I put it out. But I'm slowly trying to get around to putting together a Patreon and digitalizing myself to some extent so I can get ahead of the next catastrophe so I don't live on my savings for a while.
Fair enough.
The world as it is now, I'm like, probably a good idea to prepare for the future. So
where can people find your work?
My website is bradmcentireplays.com. That has links to my blog and podcast and YouTube channel, and you can read excerpts of the work and buy some of the stuff. Here, I'm learning to be more entrepreneurial, so you can get that play. It's backwards, I guess. I don't know.
No, it's not. It's perfect. Crafting the Solo Show. That's great.
Crafting the Solo Show is on Amazon. Actually, most of my presentable plays are on Amazon for purchase. Great. So,
that's good. That's great to know. Oh, cool. Nice.
I had a son. I have an 8-year-old, and I had all these plays in a drawer that had been produced places, and I still send them around occasionally when there's a call for plays that have been produced somewhere else.
Sure.
And but I had this horrible thought that if something happens to me, these things just die in a drawer. So I took the initiative to self-publish them.
Good for you.
On Amazon, and I've had productions from it, but not like doing Samuel French or Dramatist or
but
these other places. But they exist in the world now, so people have access to them, and if something does happen to me, my kid will continue to get the royalties.
There you go. So, and lastly, are you on the socials?
I am. Obviously, the YouTube we just talked about. I'm on Facebook. You just under my name, Brad McEntire, and Instagram, Dribblefunk is the handle. Which I'll send to you all the links here after we get to talking.
Please do.
Hey, man, it's been good to talk with you.
Likewise, Brad. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on to this episode of Playwright Spotlight.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share this show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, and until we see each other again, keep writing.